We're starting recording and we're live.
All right. Well, let's just give it a few more seconds. How are we doing on participants today? Looks like we've got most folks here. Okay. Well, Jose, go ahead and put the agenda up. We'll go ahead and get started.
I always have to relearn how to share. Okay, I think I got it.
Okay. All right. Very good. So tonight, we have some meaty topics to work on. The first thing, though, instead of updates, the idea is to work through the compiled sections. So Jose will just walk through the different sections of the compiled document and flag what the next step is for each and who's on point, and then anything that anybody wants to raise or ask about those. Then we'll have, we did get a request from a couple of task force members to flip the order of Town Center North and the transportation discussion. So we are going to do that. Hopefully we'll be able to get through the Town Center North stuff with plenty of time left to do transportation. John Mooney, I think you probably need 40 to 45 minutes. Is that right on the transportation?
Yep, I'm hoping we can do it in 45. Yep.
Okay. All right. So let's make sure we've got plenty of time for that. And then, so let's, any questions on the agenda for tonight? Okay, then, Jose, why don't you start us off, pull up the compiled document and just start working through the different sections.
It would help if I unmuted. Yeah, so I sent this out to the task force earlier today, and like I mentioned at the last meeting, I'll try to circulate this document either over the weekend or first thing on Monday. I know some of the task force are working on sections over the weekend. So land use, and one of the ones that we did do is early on was planning principles, but the land use is in progress, and Lynn, I think she's on, plans to share a version of that sometime next week, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm here, and that's the plan.
Hey, Lynn.
How you doing, Jose?
I'm doing great.
Good. Me too.
Yep. So she's going to circulate that document out, and then transportation. I incorporated the clean version that John Mooney sent out last week, and I guess we're talking about that tonight. Parks, recreation, and open space. I think Jennifer is on, and I think we're still waiting to hear from staff. But Jennifer, go ahead.
Yes, that's correct. We have a little bit from staff, and then I have a couple lines that need some editing. I'd like to submit it all at once, though, instead of, piecemeal, a couple lines here and there. But by and large, it's very close to complete, I would say.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. So going back up, housing, and I know David Vanell was gonna circulate stuff. So the compiled list basically has the memo that David Vanell shared. And I don't see him on now, so we can just return if he had anything additional to add. Public facilities, I think Charles Colby is not on as well, but I know he was waiting to hear back from staff on some questions there. I guess we can circle back on equity. I don't see Michelle just on right now, but
sorry, I have Michelle's update too.
Oh,
she
okay.
Had an appointment tonight and called me right before the meeting.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
That May 22nd version she thinks is an old version.
Okay.
And she said at the last equity meeting, right afterwards, she sent out the latest draft. It was about 2 weeks ago, she thinks.
Okay.
She can get you another copy of it, but she said she thought you were on the email, but maybe you were not. But she said she can get you the newest version that the subgroup had in their hands, and she hasn't had any major edits to since
Okay.
then.
Thanks, Jennifer. And I'll probably, she may have an update for community health at the end, but we can get there towards the end. I know Tammy and Bill had sent out and reported back at the last meeting, energy and environment. Tammy or Bill?
Yes, we have a great, just ignore this. We have an updated, new and improved, and that will be going out in the next couple days.
Thank you, Tammy.
It's, we think it's close, very, very close for, you know, we'll send this draft out to everybody.
Thank you, Tammy. All right, going back up because I know Chris Daniels sent out an updated version this past weekend on heritage resources. Chris, did you have anything additional to add?
Sure. So one major change was the map showing the areas surveyed was updated a little bit to make it a little easier to read. County staff has been tweaking with that. In addition, I added a definition of heritage resources. I don't know if this will survive all the way through because heritage resources is defined in the glossary of the plan, but I thought, why not put it right up here and up front? And if it makes it through, that's great. It kind of gives some clarification because I think that was one of the big concerns we had during this was that the definition was it could get a little hazy in my profession. I softened the language down at the section regarding the FAR to make it a very much a may and just a ability for stuff to happen. There was a question about ground disturbance, and I've pinged county staff on that I work with at the ARB. I believe the intent of that is that anything that requires going through review regarding the comp plan and requires county permitting may require that, but it's language that I actually took from the existing version. So I'm happy to make that a little bit more refined, but I want to make sure to hear what was envisioned in previous versions, because it's all over the comp plan that, you know, these surveys should be conducted, and this is principally for if archaeology is there, but this is I'm getting detail on that. Also, thank you to several members, Tammy and Lynn in particular. Tammy for some intel, and then Lynn obviously for a plethora of information about the golf courses. Hopefully you had a chance to share some of that with the folks that were conducting the survey of Reston in the past too. So they've gotten all that you shared with me, because I think that it was really helpful in making the case for why we think they might be potential historic properties and potentially future heritage resources. And some good discussion.
And actually, Chris, one of our neighbors here at Golf Course Island Cluster serves on the council. Barbara Naif met with the folks when they were doing their assessment.
Oh, excellent. But at this moment, there weren't a lot of changes that were made, just to the sections we principally discussed. And I tried to make sure consistently throughout we were using the same term, because I got some great input from several task force members that we wanted to make sure folks didn't get confused by what this was implying in some of those sections. So obviously, please feel free to take a look in the compendium that Jose has put together, and I will, as always, continue to make revisions as folks see fit.
Thank you, Chris. And I think we were at, oops, sorry.
I have 2 questions.
Go ahead, Jan.
Oh, thank you. I sent out pretty late to everybody, kind of a markup, and they're mostly questions, Chris. I happen to know that Washington Plaza is divided into 2 sections. Washington Plaza North, which is the Lake Inn as we know it, Bob Simon, and then we have the Washington Plaza West, which happens to be the old Kaiser building. Now it's services. And I was wondering, when you're talking about Washington Plaza, are you talking about Washington Plaza in its entirety, or north and west, or are you talking about Washington Plaza North? Because it's very different. I know I work there, and when I give them the address, they always end up at Washington Plaza North up the hill. I mean, west. up the hill where the Kaiser building was. So they are two different entities.
Is there a particular line you're referring to, Jan? I'm trying to, because I don't know if I saw the comments you sent out.
Okay, well, this is the wrong one. So let me go here and find this. Just sent it. We may have to come back to this. Oh, here it is. I found it. Okay, let's go down. And it is in your chart.
In the table?
Yes, yes. And when you
Okay,
do
the
list
location.
check, yeah, you do.
So, okay, I see what you're asking about. Those were meant to be specifically vague because the location of the Lake Ann Village Center is so big that it can't be confined to a single address. So it was the parcel numbers are actually far more specific, but the map and the property designation are actually on record themselves. So they're things that could be referred back to. I'd have to pull up. I don't have a map of it shown in here individually. I thought about showing a map of the Lake Ann Historic Overlay District in here as a reference document, which would probably give more clarity to that because those two are one and the same. The village.
Right.
But I understand what you're saying about from a wayfinding perspective. I'll see what I can potentially do about making that a little clear there.
All you would have to do would be to add north to that, the north symbol and a dot for north, Washington Plaza North, because that's what I think you're talking about. I don't think you're talking about anything else. That's all.
I will. Thank you, ma'am. I'll take it under advisement and see if I can make that change.
Oh, and one more thing. Do you want to mention the pavilion when you're talking about the Smith Distillery and the Bowman House and that sort of thing? Do you want to put in the pavilion?
If the pavilion is associated with either the Smith Bowman House as a connected property, then that definition should cover it. If it's independent of that, then it isn't right now defined as a heritage resource. I don't have that nomination in front of me, but I can check that. I thought the understanding that the pavilion came later and was.
No, the pavilion was there and they moved it.
Okay.
They moved it to where it is now, but it used to be there.
I'm sure I can check that with county staff to see, but these are the official names they have in the county inventory. So I'm loath to change them too much off of what they are in here. But I'll check to make sure that if it's included in that description, so that if someone were to do something to affect that, it is clear that the pavilion is included.
Well, thank you. Sorry to be nitpicky, and I really appreciate it.
Not nitpicky, just thorough. That's okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chris and Jan. So I think you'll take a look at that, Chris, and report back to the group with any edits you get. Community health. Jennifer, did Michelle share any information on that one? I think I see Michelle on. We could circle back if needed.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Michelle, are you on, Michelle?
Yeah, I am. Sorry, I'm on kid duty tonight with a swim lesson. So, but I am here. Let's see. I think where we stand with community health is I think Jose, you had sent an email to me today. I think there was some talk about having a meeting maybe this week, but I'm not sure if that's happening. I can work on some more language this weekend. And so I think that's the main update. Hopefully we'll have more to share next week.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle.
And guys, I would say, when Michelle and I sat down last winter, late last summer, we did a lot of research. We did a lot of writing then. But I honestly think that it needs more help than just Michelle to finish it, because we had an outline and we presented an outline to the task force. There was more written language beyond the outline that we presented, but if the subgroup that was working on equity also going to work on this, then I would say we need to move along, and Michelle can't write it by herself. I understand that you guys got some data, and Michelle and I haven't had a chance to take a look at it from staff recently, but if this is a chapter that we want, then it needs a little bit more TLC than just Michelle writing it. And, she'll run it by me, or ask me some questions, but it needs some more TLC.
Thank you, Jennifer. And if I guess anyone in the group wants to help out, I'm happy to share the document with the subgroup one, but anyone else in the task force that wants to help out with that. Thank you. Gary Maupin, I think economic development. I know you presented some stuff to the task force last week. Did you have an update? Gary, I think you're muted. I think Gary's muted. Tammy and Bill, public art. I know you guys sent out something last week. Have there been any updates to that section?
We received an okay from one of the developers who had Brookfield, who had an issue or had a question. I guess I asked the question, and they were fine with that. So we're good to go on that. That is a short, thankfully short section, and that could be voted on, but I think we have other fish to fry tonight.
Understood.
And Jose,
Yes, go
I
ahead,
was
Gary.
talking away, but
It's okay.
I was on mute and finally realized it. Sorry.
No worries.
So in economic development, the chapter was sent out. I got a lot of, nice comments. And Bill sent me some comments today, and Bill, I'll give you a call tomorrow, but those look, generally pretty good. Call you on a few items. And so I think that's getting close to completion. Charles isn't on tonight. He had a conflict, but as we said, we're working together. And thanks for everybody that, provided input originally. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Thank you. And Supervisor, I think we went through the whole list. Did I miss any sections?
All right. Okay, that's good. I know there's a lot of work going on in a lot of different areas. So thank you, everybody who's been doing double time on all that.
May I make a housekeeping suggestion?
Yes, Tammy.
I would like to formulate a chart that has the 13 chapters or sections, and then a date or a status, the chair, the persons in charge, the status, is it done and voted on or whatever, and then the link to it, the most recent link, so that can be updated, and then we can check and everybody can see immediately where are we and how close are we, because we're coming up fast on our deadlines, and this I think will help get an overview and be a little bit more easy rather than it's in essence what Jose's done here, but a little bit more truncated with a lot more information and actual links to the paper. So if there are changes, they go in and you press the link, and that's the most recent iteration. Does that make sense?
It does to me, I think. Jose, is that something you can do? Can you put links into this and have a table?
I've never tried that, but I can give it a shot. Yeah.
Hey, Jose,
Yeah,
this is Lynn. I can help you with that.
Yeah, I think there is a way you can do it in Word. So yeah, thank you, Lynn.
Sure thing.
It's been a long time, but I think it's like a table of contents type function. Or something.
It is. Exactly.
Thought so. Very good. All right, thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Lynn. Other questions, comments on anything in this compendium? All right, very good. Well, we're moving along. Let's jump right into the next item. Jose, you want to put the agenda back up? I don't think we're missing anything. I think we're going right into Town Center North. Yep.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay, good. So just to bring everybody up to speed, what was discussed last week, that was a brief discussion of the layout, the updated layout. So it showed slightly larger central green, showed a little bit different road configuration, including the ability for one of the roads to open up to between the central green and the field and rec center to the north there. And as promised, today there will be a discussion of what plan language needs to go in. And so we did have a presentation from Joan on county staff, putting some suggestions out, which would have, in part, listed a number of public facilities. And also, instead of saying that the residential density for the entire 50 acres should include a minimum of 1,000 units, instead, she took 50 dwelling units per acre, which is allowed under the current zoning, at least, whenever there's a PRC plan approved, and multiplied that times 50. So we had discussed, and I had invited folks on the task force to come forward with any alternative plan language. And Lynn, you picked up the baton and put something together and sent it around. So at this point, Lynn, I'll give you the floor, and if you want to talk to what you put together, and then we can have questions and discussion about that.
Thank you, Walter. I appreciate that. And thank you so much for the time that you afforded us. So I hope that everyone on the task force did receive the latest draft of the Reston it's Town Center North. And it's a very short section, so I was hoping that, and I appreciate having us go first as number 3 before we get into transportation, because we are a very short section, and I hope that everyone had an opportunity to review that before tonight's meeting. But Jose, if you're able to pull up the content, exactly. Thank you very much. What we did is we're really pleased, and we think that we have a lot of congruity between the task force ideals and what Joan and her team had presented. I mean, the materials that you have before you really kind of lays out, and if you could scroll down to the map, Jose, it's at the very end of the document. Yeah, so this was the final map. There was one edit that we made to this, that was to include block 9, which is the little blue circle down there about halfway down on the left side. So this, I believe, Walter, is the final graphic that you all had agreed upon. And we feel that this is a very clear working that we can agree with as well. So if you're looking at this map, one of the things that we wanted to point out to folks about the civic uses, and this would be for blocks 1, 3, 5, 7, and 8. Would be a new expanded regional library, North County Government Center, a 10-acre, and this is a required open space that includes the RA easement, Regional Fairfax County Park Authority Recreation Center, full-size rectangular athletic field, the expanded Embry Rucker Shelter. We're squeezing a lot into these right? An elementary school, a human services office building, and a current 30-unit townhome affordable housing development. So one of the things that you will note on this is the central green, which is between blocks 5 and block 4. And this central green, I think we've got that in at 3.5 acres. But if you look along the right side of the graphic that Jose has up for you, blocks 2, 4, and 6 would be the ANOVA. And this is the outcome of an agreement that was signed in September of 2015 between the county and ANOVA. And they're redistributing the property boundaries into these contiguous lots. So what you're seeing here in blocks 2, 4, and 6 would be the ANOVA contiguous. And then the rest of these lots would be dedicated to civic uses. Now, I think what I'm going to do, I'm presuming that everyone has had an opportunity to review this. It did initially go out about 2 o'clock this afternoon. So rather than take time to present what you've already seen, I think what I'd like to do is just ask if anyone has any questions. I think this is one of the sections of the land use chapter going to have a lot of agreement between the citizens and the community and the county.
Hey, Lynn,
Yes.
if you don't mind, I have a little bit of background. I think it'd be helpful for the group.
Yes, go ahead.
Again, I want to talk about Town Center North, and very briefly, this came as a block of 50 acres in 1974. The Gulf Reston and the county made a deal. And at that time, and in the master plan at that time, this space was identified as civic and county space for the benefit of the citizens of Reston and Fairfax County. Within that 50 acres, there was a 10 acres that was sold at 10 cents an acre, specifically to be reserved for not less than 99 years as open or recreational space. And that this carried forward into any grantee or awardee going future. I think it's also useful to know that the closest part in Block 8 to the metro is about 0.8 of a mile away from the metro. At the other end, it's 1.3 miles away from the metro. It's also the very nice map that Joan provided us here. It's take a look at the neighborhood that we're talking about. In the spectrum area that Lerner has, there's already pre-approved 1,422 dwelling units and 775,000 square feet of commercial space. In that area, there's also a 23-story building that will replace the Reston Times building. You've got 125 units at what's the daycare down there in the bottom left along the way. And who knows, someday this, the Signature building may fill up. So there's a lot of people and a lot of things going on in this area. Now, over the 47 years since this land was acquired, about 45% of it has become ANOVA land. I'm presuming because originally there was a thought of building a hospital in this area also. Now, as we know, the purpose of having a county is to provide services to its citizens. And Lynn has gone through the list of citizen needs that are there. So I won't do that again. So the little group that we've had on working on this has come up with several suggestions, which are included in the paper that Lynn has sent around. Specifically, we're looking to preserve the same standard of density that we find in other areas, PRC areas of Reston, which is not more than 20 dwelling units per acre. Now, we've talked about this and a proposal that we're making, and this is a package proposal. You start pulling on it, it falls apart. But one possibility is that all of this density, except for about 30 transitional units that would be part of the Emery Rucker rebuilt and expanded thing, would accrue to Inova in blocks 2, 4, and 6. So all of the residential density effectively would be in 2, 4, and 6. This would leave blocks 1, 3, 5, 7, and 8 for all of the civic uses that we have already talked about along the way there. And so I think it works out well. And again, this is nothing unusual. To my knowledge, there's no residential activity at the government center down at Fair Oaks there. None of the 4 buildings have any residential attached to them. So what's important, I think, here for this group is to reach an agreement so that the county and Inova can go forward and solidify the agreement to divide up the blocks. And that once this is done, then we can start talking about what should or should not or could go into the different areas of the blocks here. But it's our thought that the county area, there's an overload. There's more that has to go into that area than we're going to be able to fit. It'll require some decisions and judgment calls on Walter's and everybody's agenda in the future. But right now, we think we have a plan that will maximize the value of this property for all parties concerned. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dennis. We've got a couple of hands up. Lynn, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Well, I really do think that, in the interest of time this evening, I would rather answer questions and invite Dennis and other members of the task force to weigh in. I know that we've got this transportation chapter to go through, but, I really do think that we do have, I would say that we're 70% there on this. So,
all right. Thank you, Lynn. Mark Malcolm has his hand up, and so does Tammy Petrine. Mark, go ahead.
Very quick question. Among the list of uses in the original, in the current comprehensive plan, I believe it identified having an urban elementary school. You didn't mention that in the list of things.
I did mention elementary school. If you
I
look at
missed
the
it.
third bullet from the bottom, if you could scroll up, it is an elementary school.
And that was intended to be an urban one because there is obviously not the land area for a traditional suburban school. It had been discussed in other meetings before Supervisor Alcorn's time. Appreciate it. I just missed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Tammy, go ahead.
Thank you. There is one thing that we need to add to this iteration, and that is a sentence that absolutely states that this is RA covenanted land and the DRB has to approve the plans thereof. So just so that we don't get sideways again with being sure that RA DRB is on board with whatever plans go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. I'll make sure we get that added to the very first paragraph.
Yeah, covenants can change, Tammy.
Maybe. Not right now.
Fair enough. Other comments, questions from task force members?
Walter, this is Mark.
Yeah, Mark, please.
One question for Lynn and Dennis, and it relates to the conversation we had last week about the affordable housing piece of things, or the housing policies in general. David Vanel's initial draft, along with other county policies, encourage the provision of affordable housing on county-owned property. In fact, there are plans to develop affordable housing units on county-owned property at the government center. And there was talk 10 years ago about putting more affordable housing on the Reston Crescent development next to Lake Ann. And my question is, why did you exclude this parcel from that policy or that objective? And how do we resolve David Vanel's suggestion that affordable housing go on county-owned property in his section of the plan versus this section of the plan?
Lynn, I'll take first shot at that. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Remember, an integral part of all of this is, of course, the Embry-Rucker Center, which includes, I think, current plans are like 30 units of transitional housing. So there is a lot of diversity already in there. As far as the larger point, look, everybody, certainly I'm aware of on this, is in favor of additional affordable and workforce housing in these projects. There are, as I mentioned, there are more demands on this space than there is going to be space for them. Do you want to cut out the library? Do you want to cut out the athletic field? All of these. But this is one of those things, as I mentioned, I think the key at this point is to finally, after 6 years, to get the split between Inova and the county resolved. And once we get past that, we can talk about what goes into specific blocks.
Yeah, and I just reinforce what Dennis said. So if you look at your screen, if you look at the bullet point that is the fourth from the bottom, so that is the expanded Embry-Rucker shelter with transitional housing, that would certainly fall within the affordable housing inventory.
Yeah, I mean, my only comment would be, I don't know that this group on this night is making the final decision for the Board of Supervisors about what they do with that land area. And so I would suggest that we add affordable housing to the list of potential uses and leave it to a future conversation about how and where and when those different choices are made about what fills up that spot. I agree with you wholeheartedly that resolving the layout of the streets and who gets what under the plan is the critical path for purposes of, sort of setting the framework. But I'd hate to see us leave that off of the list and put it 100% on the private sector to solve the affordable housing piece of this, because I think we're all in it together.
Well, nothing that we have done over the past 10 months is a final. All of it goes to the Board of Supervisors. So to that extent, yes, I certainly agree. But, we live in a world of choices. If you want to put it on there, personally, I have no problem. But then you tell me what you think is of a less priority.
Well, could I also add that we have the final bullet point, which is a current 30-unit townhouse affordable housing development that is part of the equation here as well.
Fair enough. My only thought is that Walter gets paid the big bucks to make these decisions for us all. And so put it on the list and, let him and the rest of the board make the decision later on. I'm not presupposing that I know the answer to that any better or what goes on the list or not off the list. I just want to make sure that we provide that flexibility.
I'm really enjoying this discussion, so keep going. This is good. John Mooney. John, you're next, and then Bill, and then Myra.
Thank you, Walter. And if I may, I want to ask Larry to summarize some of Reston Association's current concerns about the county's recent proposal for this. Larry?
All right, I guess everybody can hear me now. So we just made a list of some thoughts that we'll throw out there for discussion. One of the things that we noted, of course, Lynn, you already said the commitment to the 10 acres of open space needs to be realized. And, that's not, sidewalk planter, anti-John Carter kind of stuff, true open space. The tree save areas on the current plan, they're shown on development blocks, but it would be nice to clarify that whatever existing canopy trees are preserved, that these will be in public areas and at a minimum be publicly accessible. And I think there needs to be a written commitment to that, because that was one of the, as most of you who have sat through some of those meetings and will next week, that was a really important thing for the design review board to design sympathetically to the existing open space that's out there and the particularly the tree canopy areas. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of talk about the number of units. You know, right now it's just a calculation on acreage. I know those that I've spoken with believe that's too high, and that you know, as Dennis has alluded to, most of the density go to the Inova parcels to the east, and they transition both in terms of height and density from east to west and south to north, consistent with transitioning out of the higher density existing town center area. I guess, you know, kind of a couple of questions. A little bit unsure of how these parcels will work together, if they're truly going to be separate development blocks. And, you know, each one will have to come back to the DRB for consideration. Kind of, you know, how will those parcels work together? The road between blocks 2 and 4 is a question, you know, T-bones into the civic area, and could it or should it move north to tie into the road at the north of the civic green? It's just a question, and I suspect that the designers have already talked about that, because I know it was shown as an option on one plan. And then there's a traffic impact. I'll give Mr. Mooney the credit for this, that based on the ITE and the current density proposed, 787 weekday AM peak trips and 1,230 weekday PM trips generated. So that's a fairly substantial impact. And then the last thought was that, you know, I think the comp plan should address the eastern parcels separate from the western parcels. And let's be very distinct between how that language is crafted, what mix of uses, development intensity, and building height for each. And I think it'll be much cleaner in the end if those are, you know, essentially segregated in the plan text. And these thoughts we generated prior to seeing Lynn's sent out today. So, John or Jennifer, you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Larry. That's good for me for now. Jennifer?
And Larry, I apologize for not getting the language into this version that was sent out. If you submitted that ahead of time. So we'll make sure that gets discussed, considered, and remedied.
And I would say 90% of it is already in here because I knew the list. We're writing the text. So it's almost all in there.
All right. Thank you, John Mooney. Anything else, John?
No, thank you.
Okay. Bill Penniman and then Moira.
Okay. I just have a few questions. Well, let me just say I support what Mark Looney said about leaving open the possibility of more affordable housing. It's hard to find local places for it, and something that the county controls will allow it to allow the public to be sure it's going to keep going and not be converted by a developer down the road. So, so I think this is a good place for it. Now, having said that, I find what's in here in the text, and it's probably me, not your drafting, but I do find it confusing because there is a reference to a 30-unit townhouse affordable development down there at the bottom of the page, 130 affordable housing units. I don't know where those came from or whether that includes the 30. Are the 130 some planned?
So, yeah, so if I could just answer that. So block 9 is part of the 49.
I'm sorry, block which?
So block 9, so it's
9,
on the graphic that was shown.
Right.
So you see the little blue circle there, down there. So that is block 9. So that is part of the 49.2 acres. And that was presented by Joan with 130 units that we intentionally exempted from the density count. So
Okay.
is 984. So that's from 49.2 times 20. So
Okay, so that's where the 130 came from.
yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That answers that question. You know, in terms of the 10 acres of required open space, how much of that is taken up by the 3.5 acres, the separate gathering space, which may or may not be part of the 3.5 acres, the soccer field or whatever? Is the 10 acre all used up, or are there leftover acreage that can be used someplace else?
I think they're also including the Edgewater Park, which is up in the, you can see that. Yeah, thank you, Jose. If you can see Jose's cursor, that Edgewater Park is also part of the open space. I don't know that we have any additional open space left. I want to thank Walter for doing everything that he could to get the central green expanded. I believe that is 3.5 acres. The Edgewater Park, I think, is about 1 acre, if I'm correct. And then the athletic field that you see up at block 1.
Uh-huh.
Are you seeing that?
Oh, yeah, sure. I was just wondering,
So
that's part of the 10. Do you know? So is there anything left, or are you counting also the tree save area? Is that part of the open space?
So we're at 9. Yes,
Yeah.
and Joan will tell you, but we're at 9 point, what is it, 01 or 02 acres, Joan?
Yeah, so if I could expand
Joan,
on that.
please, yeah.
Yeah. So the open space includes the central green at 3.5 acres. It includes the athletic field at 2.15 acres. It includes Edgewater Park at 2.28 acres.
2.2.
It includes
2.2. Wow.
2.28 acres, yes. It includes the recreational center. We get 1 acre sort of credit towards our MOU with RA for the recreational center. And it also includes the tree save, the 2 tree save areas at 1.8 acres.
Okay, that's helpful. I was just trying to understand. There are a lot of numbers kicking around. Go ahead.
Joan.
Go ahead, Bill. I'll chime in later. I have a couple other comments, but go ahead.
Okay, so the other question I had really is the central green and what's the plan for it? I mean, I have been places where they have a nice manicured lawn that nobody uses. And I've been places where they have a green with, you know, restaurants next to it, activities next to it, people next to it. And it's used a lot, or maybe with some small scale, you know, bocce ball or small scale activities that are sort of preset to encourage people to come out and use it. Has any thought been given to what this green is going to be other than green?
Yes, actually, we presented a conceptual plan to the Reston DRB back in 2009. So there are plans for a small performance area, a civic green, basically almost like an amphitheater, several seating areas that would work well with the library. There's quite an extensive plan. And now that we have a larger space, the idea is after we get approval from the DRB, we'll go back and update those plans.
Okay, it would be great if you could share it just so we have that as background. My main point is it would be much better to have something that's active than something that people walk past or drive past.
Yes, it's absolutely active.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, I think there's agreement on that. And one of the things I think we should keep in mind is the blocks that Inova has are of a mixed use. And I can certainly see that there might be restaurants and shops along Library Drive there that face into the green and to the other areas, in addition to some of the things you were talking about.
Okay. Yeah, that we should encourage. But in any event, I'm glad people are working their way through what might turn it into a really cool space as opposed to just a green space.
Good question.
Dennis, this is Dave Sittler representing Inova. I have
Hi,
a
Dave.
question because we haven't seen this language, and I hear everybody talking about the 20 dwelling units per acre, but is there still commercial space? Again, I can't. When you move put the plan up, all the text is gone, so we really don't know what this says.
Yeah, Dave, thank you. Again, take a look at all of this. I mean, our thought was that it made sense to give the density to you in order to free up the civic areas for civic uses. And so please take a look at the language we have, and any thoughts or suggestions you have, please get them to Lynn or to any of the rest of us.
Yeah, understood.
Take a look.
But as I read this, the way it's written, there is no non-residential density. There's civic density, but there's no non-residential density that's allowed in the plan. So you can't have restaurants on the first floor of residential and things like that.
Oh, well, that's a failure on our drafting then, if that's the case, because our thought was very much that it's up to you, but our thought was that you would want to have a mixed use in there, including restaurants, retail, what have you, on the ground floor of the different buildings. But again, that would be your area.
If you look at the first line of text on your page that Jose has pulled up there, oh, sorry, Jose, go back. So it was planned residential with accessory retail. So it's I think for the accessory retail.
I think you need to be careful on that, because to some people, accessory retail means a tiny space that is not terribly inviting, except to the people who happen to live in the building, a little deli or something. I think for it to work, and I won't speak for Inova, but it needs to be something more than just that. So that's a language issue that I'm sure can be worked out.
Yeah, I'm counting on Dave buying me a beer at the beer garden across from the athletic field there at the big new sports bar restaurant that he's going to have for us.
I'll take one of those too.
And I think that's such a great idea. It could qualify as a civic use.
Exactly.
Why not use it for the memorial that we were talking about? Seems to me that would be a better, more central location to have the memorial there. I think you need to be careful about the restaurants. We have a lot of restaurants and a lot of streets. And I think you would need to not have it end up to be another, not have it end up to be another city-fied street. That's it.
Okay, we have a couple of folks that have had their hand up for a little while. Myra, I called your name, I think, several times as being in line. So Myra, go ahead. And then Chris Daniel, I believe.
Okay, I just have some questions, and if I'll just list them out and maybe someone can answer them after I finish. One of the questions I had is that field fixed to that spot? And the only reason that jumps out to me is I've been a lot of soccer fields where the balls go off the field and into the woods, and that is really close to the road in my mind, but I'm sure that will be thought about. But I just wondered if the field goes in a different, or could go in a different location. But one thing that jumped out to me, and I don't know anything about it. It talks about underground parking. It says full-size rectangle field with adjoining playground and inclusive of underground parking. I just wondered what the idea or what the plan is for that. I don't think I've ever seen underground parking in a county park. So I just was curious to know how that would work. The elementary school, I'd be curious to know if you have an urban elementary school, if you could provide us somebody with an example of another urban elementary school in Fairfax County that I could envision that would work in a place that doesn't have any outdoor play space for children, or what the plan is for that. I was curious about the human services building. I wondered, is it possible to build on top of your building, Walter? Is there any room for expansion on current existing a building there, maybe even the police station? I don't know. I'm just curious to know if you can build up. The other thing I thought about is we're using words like expanded library, expanded shelter. I wonder if it would be better to be a little bit more specific about the size you're seeking for some of these things, so that we can be clear as to what we mean by the word expanded. Same thing with like an elementary school. If we envision an elementary school, what's the population size that we envision it to hold? So those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Mara. Some of those things I don't think we would know yet. I mean, for example, the school system tends to build an elementary school whenever they need an elementary school, and you know, that tends to be something they can project. Joan, I believe the elementary school at Bailey's is an example, Bailey's Elementary, of a
Yes.
more urban design.
Yes, that's right. And so these plans have been shared with the Fairfax County Public Schools, as well as the existing uses that need to remain on the site. So Fairfax County Public Schools is giving a lot of thought as to compatible uses on this site. So they're exploring their options, and they've agreed that it would be an urban model. So.
And
what about the underground
Joan,
parking?
Yeah, Joan, why don't you address that? Joan, was that assuming that there would be more density available? I believe it probably did, right? Is that correct?
Are you referring to the schools?
No, the underground parking.
Oh, yes. So we have looked at a lot of options for parking. First of all of these roads would have off-street parking. County blocks would have underground garages or partially underground garages, and very limited surface parking. Some of the things that we've looked at would be an above ground parking garage on block 5. Actually, it's not really block 5, it's your block. This would be a future parking garage that would replace the existing surface lot, and it would be a combination of providing secure parking for the police, as well as public parking for the Human Service Center, which would be located on block 5. It's just something that we explored when we were looking at the Human Service building. We've also just explored the option for a level of parking to be located below the athletic field. So we're just looking at all of our options. I want to make sure everybody knows that this is a long-term development. It will be phased over many years, but the intent is that it won't be a lot of surface parking.
What about expanding, like, I think the government center is only, is it 1 story, 2 stories? Can you build on top of that?
So that is the Human Service building. And the intent is that we would consolidate many of our leases in Reston. So I believe that I think it was Lynn, or I'm not sure who was talking about the building that is at Lake Ann West. So those functions would be relocated here. And so we're looking at a new Human Service building, approximately 180,000 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Joan. And Myra, thank you for the comments. I think there is one of the challenging things with this is there's a little bit of crystal balling that goes in terms of the long-term timing and what some of those public uses, which ones will come first, that kind of thing. So So good questions. And Joan, did you have something else you wanted to say?
I did, yes. I just wanted to mention about the county density. So the intent here is really to provide the county as much flexibility as possible. There's quite a bit of funding required, not only for all of these public facilities, but for the infrastructure that's required. And so we are looking for a potential development partner. We've always considered that this property would be mixed use, that it would not just be an office park that is 9 to 5, that it would have life after at night and on the weekends. So our intent is to provide a lot of flexibility for the future. There will be additional affordable housing considered, as well as we're interested in having market rate housing. One of the things we've looked at is potentially locating the library with market rate housing and getting a development partner to help us. So I just wanted to share that that was the intent behind the development plan.
And I'll just add on to that. Thank you, Joan. You know, depending upon how this goes, if it goes along these lines where basically Inova gets the vast majority of the density is cut back, and the focus is on public uses on the county-owned property, I'm totally fine with that personally. The problem with that is the thing that we're going to have to deal with. I wouldn't say it's a problem, but the challenge with that is going to be activating some of those areas that might need activation. But also, we're talking about probably somewhere, and Joan, correct me if I'm wrong, probably talking about maybe $150 million worth of public uses and associated infrastructure, you know, counting all those up. And we may well need to do some joint development agreement or two to help make that happen. One possibility, if this does go forward like this, if and when that does happen, it could be brought back for consideration by the community as an out-of-turn plan amendment at some point in the future. So, you know, again, we're talking about stuff that's probably 10, 20, 30 years before it really comes through. But anyway, I just put that out there.
I think
Walter, could I ask, and maybe Mark could also address this. The map we're looking at now, the sort of expanded Town Center North, which includes the spectrum. And again, I don't know where the status of all these things are, but can you use any proffers that were given to support the civic side of the equation here? Is that possible?
It's a good question, Dennis. And Mark, I don't know if you represented learners in Spectrum or not. I was just actually looking at that staff report. The Spectrum learners got 57 dwelling units per acre. So just to FYI, we're talking about property immediately to the east here that is zoned, currently has a zoning plan approved at 57 dwelling units per acre. My guess is they're not going to step back from that or step down from that. It would have to be a renegotiation, and given that amount of density, I think it'd be pretty unlikely we'd be able to get any additional contributions. Mark Looney, did you handle those cases? I can't remember.
I did, yeah.
Oh, good.
And they're
so can we get some more contributions from your client there, Mark?
Let me get back to you on that. Yeah, and there some of those units are bonus units. At the time that they did their, if memory serves me correctly, at the time that they did their amendment to the PRC plan, bonus units were not available if it exceeded the zoning ordinance limitations on the zoning side. And I think that got amended after, or it got amended in between the Town Center concept plan and the PRC plan approval, if memory serves me correctly. But that's the kind of short story on it.
But Mark, I believe that is 57 units per acre.
I can't remember, Walter.
Maybe that's with bonus.
Yeah, it may be with bonus, or it could be that it was post dedication, because it was originally the density is based on the original size of the development plan, and there were a number of road improvements constructed after the original zoning was put in place. Because I should, not to dive too into the weeds on it, but that plan is actually, for lack of a better term, part of the by right zoning on the property, because when it was rezoned in the late 80s, it was designated as PRC-Town Center, which has the 50 dwelling units to the acre on a site-by-site basis associated with it. And then the commercial component was proffered to be either a 0.5 or a 0.7, depending on the location. Where Harris Teeter was the lower density, where Best Buy used to be was the higher density area. And the existing development essentially was an controversial underdevelopment of that property at the time that it was constructed. Bob Simon came to the public hearing and complained that it was not dense enough. And so what Lerner did was go back and propose to redevelop to meet the original density that the town center zoning contemplated.
Right, I do remember some of that history, Mark. Let's
So,
get
Walter,
yeah,
could I just
Lynn?
add a comment? I want to build on what Dennis was saying, and just responding to Joan's comments that, I think that these areas, blocks 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, 7 and 8, I think that, granted the county wants to get some density in there, but I don't think that the community is going to be very supportive of anything that is going to take away the civic space that we are due.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. I think saying you're due sounds a little entitled.
I'm sorry.
It's a sounding phrase.
It's been a long
Citizen
time.
government
But
is
I
all about,
agree.
Walter.
What's that?
I said that's what citizen involvement, community involvement is all about.
No, I know.
I have a
but-
comment here. This is Tammy.
Yes,
And I
Tammy,
have
and
to
let's
say
move through, I think a couple other folks haven't spoken, but Tammy,
okay.
please.
Well, I'm just having a fucking stroke here, I have to tell you. Where in the county is there apartments over a library? Where in the county? I mean, we are like the stepchild that we have given, a third or 2/5 or whatever it is to Inova. No problem. That makes sense. But come on, where in the world is the assumption that to pay for the things that we've been waiting for, this Hunter Mill district and the regional library and the North County Police Station and your office have to have residential above it to pay for it? This is crazy. We
Well,
do
Tammy,
not, wait a minute.
Tammy,
we do
that's not what Lynn's proposal is. That's what I said. And frankly, that's a battle you can wage later. Okay.
But
It's
I
not
just
a battle to wage right now.
Yeah, I just want to point out that we have so many civic needs in
I agree.
Reston that need to be put on these blocks, and we need to get this stuff built. And having partners and residential, we'll never get a library. That library is so many years overdue, and ditto on the rec center.
I believe Loudoun County has a library, something like that, but that's okay. Tammy, you're right. That's the focus. My focus is on getting these civic uses going. I didn't run for office to be developer.
Exactly.
I ran for office to get stuff like this going.
Right.
There may need to be some stuff along the way, and that's okay. And we'll come to that bridge when we come to it and figure out what makes sense. But yeah, I think, Tammy, the points that you're making, I think, are not included in this proposal that Lynn's put on the table anyway. Lynn's, that's correct, right?
Well, we don't have apartments over civic uses
this
here.
Is civic dedication to blocks 1, 3, 5, 7, 8. Yeah.
So let's go, Chris, Daniel, you have your hand up, and then I do want to see if there are any attendees that want to, and Jose, could you remind the attendees how they can raise their hand? I know John Farrell knows how to raise his hand.
Yeah, so you have to open the participants panel, and mine's is kind of like blown up, but I'll show it here. Hopefully everyone can see this. So you open the participant panel. It looks like the person holding 3 plates, and kind of
Can't
down
see it.
here.
Can't see it. Sorry.
Let me stop sharing. I think I could do it this way.
Yeah.
All right. So everyone can probably see the event window now.
Yep.
So you open the participants pane, which is the person right here holding 3 plates, and you turn it back on, and over here, it's actually hidden on mine. Next to this little megaphone, there should be a little hand, and you just click that hand, and then I should be able to see you and mute you and unmute you.
All right, thank you, Jose. And I call that out because I know this has been an area of great interest for a lot of folks in the community for a long time. So, Chris, let's go to you, and then let's see if anyone else has any comments, and then John Mooney.
Sure.
Promise we're going to get to you on transportation.
I'll try to be short and sweet on this. So I like all the stuff, the civic uses and the proposals here. What I'm looking at the section is I'm wondering if there's a way we can format it that actually talks about particular blocks lumped by the civic versus Innova kind of framework, so that it's a little bit, I think that's part of the problem I'm having when I read it, is there's the history of the section, and then there's sometimes items about the individual intent for each block, or the general intent for several blocks. And if there was a way for us to kind of make that a table, or even just some subheadings for, the blocks that are specifically focused for, civic use versus the Innova ones, so that someone could quickly go, because I'm thinking about if I'm looking at it from a plan perspective, I want to be able to go to those relevant sections as quickly as possible to find out, well, what is my flexibility there?
That's a great idea. We can do that.
Yep. Form follows function.
Another thing I was thinking about is, obviously, since this is going to take a long time to play itself fully out, is since we do have existing spaces that are known, we should really think about highlighting how connectivity will grow as these areas are developed. So obviously we do have one section surrounding the community center and all those spaces that do exist. How do we make sure that if someone goes to one of these existing spaces, the new are like, I'm not traipsing through empty lots and things as things slowly come online. That might be an important thing to think about as development comes online. How can it facilitate interconnection between blocks? I'm just thinking of times wandering around construction and things like that. That's just a concern of mine. My last observation is just the comment that was made about Lake Ann West, which is just something that triggered a thought in my head, that if the county's going to vacate the building there, which I'll point out was built in 1974, it's not 50 yet, but it's one of those buildings that is going to start aging into the area where it's going to have to be evaluated. I personally, as an architectural historian, don't think it's a very remarkable structure, but it is designed in a particular way to blend into the Lake Ann area to not really stand out. If the county starts vacating that space and eventually moving here, buildings like that may eventually come up for people proposing, hey, I want to do something different here. And that's in a very critical space in Reston, that if we don't keep that in mind, this is just an observation, that changes there could really affect a lot of properties in other areas if the county decides to relocate here in the future. That's all I had. Otherwise, thanks a bunch, Lynn. I thank you for spearheading this one. Excuse me. Thanks for all of y'all working alongside Lynn spearheading this one. I don't want to ignore others.
All right. Thank you, Chris. I see Jennifer has her hand up. Jennifer?
Well, Chris, you started off my comments for me, because I agree with the way that I'd love to see the writing go. It's really difficult, though, to write this plan because we don't know what the county wants to do with each of the blocks. But Joan, you've given some nuggets of information tonight about some things that you guys are thinking that were not in your presentation previously. And it's those types of nuggets of information that I think would make a document like this feel like a proposed plan or a potential proposed plan. I can see why you wouldn't maybe take it to the DRB and ask for approval on it. But if you guys have talked about how you might activate these civic blocks, that would be really helpful to add to this writing. We don't know that. We knew that you might want to put the rec center on block 1 next to the field, but other than that, some of the other things you've been talking about tonight have been helpful to hear, and I think would be helpful to add to the text. So if we could get some of those details, that would be helpful. And then the second thing on this piece, and you know, I don't want to have Tammy fall off her chair, but I know that she might after this comment. But from an RA perspective, I would say this is covenant land, and the ANOVA pieces could, you know, would be RA members, and so this would be a perfect example of, say, a park space or some type of proffer coming to RA related to the open space parks or rec section of this. And I'm not saying like the rec center, but you know, if these are going to be RA residents on some of these properties, then being able to maintain some space around them would be, I think, a good thing to consider.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. I do see Jan has a hand up. Jan?
Okay, hi. Thank you. Just a quick comment. The 11848, which is the county services building that this was talking about, has a great parking lot that is widely used for the Lake Ann Fellowship. And that, I think that parking lot should be maintained, because with the farmers market and everything else, whatever goes in there, I think that wonderful ample parking should be maintained. Thank you.
Okay.
Jen, what block did you say that's on?
That's she was talking about Lake Ann.
Oh, I was like, where? Sorry,
Yeah,
Jen.
sorry.
You totally caught me off guard there. I was like,
We've been going back and forth a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
Okay. Good question, Jennifer. All right. So any final comments before we move to transportation? I think
Walter, I think Moira had a question that she put in the chat, and that is the senior living center going to remain? It is in block 6. So that is a Nova space.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone from Innova wants to
Yeah,
address
hey
that.
Walter, it's Tim Sampson. So
Tim.
Over the long term, the answer is no, but it may be a long time before that changes. While I've got the floor, can I ask a question though about the open space in the language? There is a bullet that says 10-acre required open space, including the RA easement, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding what that means and what the RA easement is.
Larry, that's for you.
I did not, I don't know what the easement means in the context of how you all wrote it. Because
an easement that
my
runs.
guess is it was the hockey stick shape of the 10 acres that was in the original plan way back when.
So that's why I want to be clear, right? The hockey stick is long gone, right? And
that's correct.
Okay. Correct. Okay, so there isn't an RA easement at this point in time, but there's an open space agreement or MOU that Joan referenced earlier.
Is there an RA easement that abuts the Edgewater Park?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, the only RA piece on this is that it's subject to the covenants.
Okay, thank you.
And that's pretty important, Larry, but yes, correct.
That is important. That's correct. But I think, and Joan had mentioned earlier too, that the open space, the 10 acres of required open space it's specific in that MOU that kind of what goes into the 10 acres, right? Including the athletic facility and some of those things. So I just want to make sure everybody's got good visibility on it's not 10 acres of, more central green or something like that. It's a lot of things that comprise that.
It's 10 acres out of the initial 50.
Right. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Dennis. I did want to just point there a couple other comments in the chat. One idea that the name should be changed from Reston Town Center North to anything else. Lynn, you might it has been kind of a rough, what, 10
We'll
years?
work on that.
plus? Yeah, so Lynn, be thinking about that. And obviously, the ANOVA piece is maybe get named something completely different, but at least for this purpose, maybe there's another name.
Will do.
And then
Thank
another
you.
idea of a computer lab. You know, there may be, that sort of raises the issue. There may be some other community civic type uses that frankly are not on this list. I don't think this list would necessarily be exclusive, you know, for the county property. So Lynn, think about that a little bit. How there might be some language that opens up to additional community type uses.
Walter, there could be things added to the library and a lot of these things,
Right.
makerspace, what have you, that would make sense to go to the library.
Yeah, I agree. There certainly can be accessory use. I would just hate for this to be, well, a terribly limiting factor in terms of those community uses. So, okay. Any final comments, questions?
Hey, Supervisor, someone had sent me something through the chat. Bob had a comment. He's an attendee. I can mute him right now. Give me 1 second.
Sure. Bob, go right ahead.
He is unmuted.
Okay, Bob, we can't hear you at this point. Did you bring him up as a panelist, Jose?
Let me try that. Maybe that may work.
I think he wrote in though ask Google if they'll sponsor or fund a computer lab is what I see in the chat unless there's some extra.
Okay. And by the way, Mark Malcolm Lynn had a comment suggestion. Civic uses include but are not limited to, something maybe along those lines.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think he's.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry,
well,
Supervisor.
I think, Lynn, I think this does need to come back probably next week, if possible, or the week after. You know, with updated language. Lynn, is that something you can keep the pen for?
Sure.
Okay. So
yeah, actually, I think that this will get amended with the comments from the task force and then included into the larger land use chapter, if that's okay with you all.
okay, very good. Heard no objection to that. Okay, Lynn, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody thinking about this and then coming back. Obviously, and this is true of really the whole plan, but particularly where there are pretty significant changes like this, we will be, or I would put it this way, I'm going to make sure that the people that are most affected by this, and Gary, I'm looking at you and your neighbors in the Paramount, you know, are engaged, you know, and in the fall that we get input from Paramount, from Edgewater, from Oak Park, you know, from the folks that really do live immediately adjacent. So
Exactly.
yeah, want to make sure everybody understands that too.
May I ask a question about
Sure,
the DRB? What exactly is the county going to be discussing with the DRB? Is it road grid only?
Joan, can you address that?
It's simply a change in the conceptual plan. So we have an approved conceptual plan that is on our website and I showed you last week.
Right.
And we're merely asking to amend that conceptual plan to this one.
For the street grid.
For the street grid and the central green.
Thank you so much. That helps.
All right, any final comments, questions? Okay, all right, so now let's go ahead. John Mooney, you've been very patient. It's 8:25. Hopefully that we will have enough time to get all the way through your time with transportation. I know this is something you spent, you and the transportation subgroup spent an awful lot of time working on earlier in the process. So Go ahead and take it away, John.
Thank you, Walter. And Jose is going to be my partner in working through this. So our ultimate goal tonight is vote on the substantial completeness of the transportation chapter. And we ambitiously aim to complete this in 45 minutes without curtailing essential discussion. So good luck to us on that. Before the final vote, I propose that we first go through the list of 8 specific questions. And this corresponds to yellow highlighted sections in the full text, both the clean and the red line version, which Jose has on the screen here. I believe these 8 questions need to be resolved, either because there were inconsistencies or ambiguities in the text, unresolved opposing positions, or suggestions added later without full discussion by the Transportation Working Group or the task force. So I think if we go through this, in my view, we will have answered most of the remaining questions in the text. At the end, we're going to have time for people to address any other questions in the text they may have. But going back to this, so what we want to do, because the issues listed already include the background information, which I hope you've read ahead of time, I will not give an explanation on any of the points. I will simply name the point for discussion, ask whether there are any questions, first of the task force members, and then of the citizens in attendance, because they're affected by some of these. I will ask all speakers to keep their comments as brief as possible, hopefully no more than a minute apiece. The one exception is I've asked Mark Malcolm to give a very brief explanation of the Polo Fields community's concern about the proposed grade separated intersection at Fairfax County Parkway and Sunrise Valley Drive. Does that make sense? Okay, so the first question are speed limits. So because the way this document developed, so everyone was able during and after meetings to add their own comments, you had back and forths on many things. And so it's hard to say what was the last position standing. And for those interested in the speed limits, I gave a summary of the differing viewpoints listed on an attachment to this sheet. Jose has it on page 3 of this. This is the one place I made a proposal. I proposed that we go with Jan's recommendations, which she made on 419, and it offers a range of speeds rather than one speed. So some wanted to lower the speeds, some wanted to keep the same speeds. Jan gave a range. I recommend we go that way. That's all I'll say on it. Discussion. Anybody have discussion?
Yeah, John, have you talked to the police about how all this plays out from their perspective? Is this something that they think is a good idea, or a bad idea?
I have not, Dennis. I will tell you that the current posted speeds, for example, on Reston Parkway are 40 miles per hour the whole length. And for Barron Cameron, they run from 45 miles an hour to the west of Reston Parkway, and then 40 miles on the east of Reston Parkway, and 45. Let me try it again. 45 east of Reston Parkway, 40 west of it. But these are planning recommendations.
Yeah, the 45 is pretty much as you're just getting into Reston. The 40 really is through Reston.
Yeah.
On Reston Parkway. Which I think I'm concerned about a 35 mile an hour range, because I think that people will speed. I really do. I think that's an incentive to speed, and I don't want an incentive to people say, "Oh, that's ridiculous. I'll just go 40." That's all.
Okay.
John, this is Bill.
Bill.
The existing comp plan calls for what I recommended, which is 30 to 35 on Reston Parkway, 30, not 35, on Sunset Hills, Sunrise Valley, and Wheelie. Collector streets 30 to 25, depending on the circumstances, and local streets 25. That, it seems to me, makes sense for multiple reasons. One, we know everybody speeds. People generally go 5, 10, and sometimes 15 miles an hour over the speed limit. So starting from a lower base is better. 2, it's safer. And I can say walking along Sunrise Valley on the sidewalk and seeing people barreling down the hill, often at 40, 45 miles an hour, gives a feeling of being very unsafe. Along Reston Parkway, same problem. If you want this to be a walkable, safe community, lowering the speeds will help. If you want to encourage people to use routes along the Fairfax County Parkway and outside of Reston, instead of making this their through speedway, lowering the speed limits will help. So I think from a placemaking standpoint, a safety standpoint, and just a reasonable try to make this a community that serves the people here, not the people barreling through. Those speed limits that are in the existing plan should be the ones we recommend going forward. Thank you.
It disturbs me that you say that everyone speaks.
Pardon me, Jan, let's see if anyone has comments before you speak again. And,
okay.
And Jose, could you please go to the third page where I've tabulated the various pages, the various speeds?
Right.
Right.
And your first column is incorrect as to minor arterial B. The current plan says 30 miles an hour. Page 33.
Okay.
I guess.
Could I make one comment? Sorry, it's Lynn. Sorry.
Yeah, Lynn, go ahead. I'll help you out, John.
I'd like to just build on what Bill Penniman was saying in terms of making Reston a safe, walkable community. And it was my understanding that the original concept was people could get from point A to point B without having to cross the street. So that was the original concept behind Reston. So we've kind of lost sight of, making sure that we do have methods of folks to ambulate from point A to point B without crossing a street. Thank you.
So are you supporting Bill's speed limits? The rightmost column?
I'm supporting having people be able to mobilize through Reston the way that we were originally intended to do so without having to cross a street. So tunnels, underpasses, overpasses for pedestrians.
Okay, Bill, I will point out to you that the speed limit of 30 miles an hour is within the TSAs. So
that is true. And the main
speed limits listed. There are no speed limits listed for non-TSA areas.
It is true. That is focused on the TSAs, but it's the center of Reston that I'm most concerned about. I mean, out Wheelie beyond Barron Cameron, I don't care. Barron Cameron beyond Wheelie, I don't care. But in the areas where people are living and moving and walking and cars are driving too fast, it would be nice to stick with the goals that were established the last time around of slightly slowing things down. It won't add much time to people who live here, but it would make it a safer, more pleasant place to live. That's my view.
I guess I have a little different view of that. I mean, I think we want to have appropriate speed limits and limit speeding with all the right tools to do that. But we still have to have people move around Reston and people get to Reston to work or, come here to shop and those kind of things. So I don't think lowering the speed limits, except in where they're, really should be lowered, is going to really help. It's just going to cause problems in moving about Reston.
Okay.
If I could, I agree with Jan on this. There's a rational sort of approach that people take to speed. I'm concerned because a lot of the roads that we have go beyond Reston, and do we want to have a situation on Wheelie where you go from 45 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour? I mean, that's what speed traps in South Georgia do. We don't need that. People are rational. We put if it's a divided highway with no direct entrance into it other than at streets, then it should be a higher speed limit. If it's a dense area with lots of houses that come right up to the road, you have a slower speed limit. It's just common sense.
It seems to me too, the Fairfax County staff and the DOT really looks at these pretty carefully. So you can actually try to, reduce some that are not appropriate, but let's just not, make a rule in here that's not, I would say, not realistic.
Okay. We need to finish this up.
John, this is David Vanell. Let me weigh in with support to the Bill's column. And the fact is that people are not rational and they don't use common sense when they drive. If I sit on my back deck,
99.9% of the time they do.
If I sit on my back deck and watch a T intersection to a fairly significant street, 75% of the people don't stop when they're making a right turn. They blow right on through. And that's not rational. So my only observation in terms of Bill's suggested speed limits is that I think down in the TSA in the grid of streets, it ought to be 20.
Well, I'm with you, and I don't think I agree with that.
That's ridiculous.
I'm going to call the question. Obviously, this will be reviewed by Walter. This will be reviewed by county staff. Let's see where the votes are. So I will take them in the order. I will take Bill's first. How many? So I propose that we vote between Bill's column and Jan's column. Is that?
I have one more comment then. The idea of the statement "everybody speeds."
Okay, Jan, we need to move on. I think we've heard the various positions. So
there's one thing I need to add on this. Right now we have street classifications. Mark Malcolm speaking. There is one major road that is not within this, that's not a direct purview, but Fairfax County Parkway should be identified within the street classifications because of its exceptional nature of passing through. It supports Bill Penniman's thing about Reston Parkway being included. It also has an issue elsewhere because if that road is slowed down as it is projected by prior studies when you deal with the other issue that I'm to talk to, it makes these problematic. Just as a thought, that's one thing that is omitted from this table right now as we address this issue. Thank you.
Mark, the reason is because Reston Parkway is listed as an expressway, and we're only listing speed limits for major arterials, minor arterials type A and B, collectors, and local streets.
John, can I help you with the voting?
There's one other thing that needs to be noted for what was also in an earlier statement being made regarding coordination of police. Within Reston area, roads are owned by different groups, not only VDOT, there's some private, there's some that's in Metropolitan Airport Authority, there's some by Public Works, some by the public schools. It's a recognition that there are different ownership of different roads within this right now. That's the only other thing that I need to bring forward. And that came out of the RNAG study before, dealing with that, with the multimodal centers and such. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
John, to kind of help you in your voting, if you ask a yes or no question, like, do you want Bill's column or do you want Jan's column, then we can vote using the buttons in our screens.
That's exactly what we're going to do.
Perfect.
Jose has agreed to be the hand counter. So if everyone would clear out your hand signals from the screen.
Jan, you just need to drop down your hand.
John, I wanted
Yes.
to say something before I vote. This is Moira. What if we just got rid of all of it? Just get it all out of the plan. That's not in your columns. I would say defer to the transportation section of the comp plan and get rid of all the speed limits. That's not an option, but I'd like to vote for that.
Yeah.
Why do they need to be in the comp plan?
I don't know why. I think you should defer to the transportation section or defer to the agency that makes speed limits.
Right.
Love it, love it.
Yeah, let's make that an option.
Okay, so one option would be silence on speed limits. All those in favor of that, please raise their hand.
This is Moira's suggestion.
Right.
Yes.
Hey, Jose, how many do you see? Has everybody voted?
Not everybody, but
not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
My hand should be raised.
It is raised, but
Okay,
Jose,
good.
I think you
I
just
can't
need to
see
say
it.
you're cutting it off and then count so that people aren't raising their hands
Okay.
while you're counting.
All right. I'm cutting it off.
How many do we have?
I have 10.
10, okay. How many are in favor of Bill Penniman's suggestions?
Hey, everyone, put your hands down. David Gill, put your hand down. Mark Looney, put your hand.
I think they wanted their
Oh.
hand up.
Okay. Okay.
All right. I'm cutting it off in 3, 2, 1. I see 4.
4.
I didn't see Walter vote.
He has like a handshake one.
I turned off my screen, Mark.
He doesn't have a death wish.
If everyone would take their hands down, please, including myself, okay?
Mark Looney, take your hand. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. How many are in favor of Jan's, which is the second last column?
I think we all switched over to option A.
John, did you put your hand up for?
I think it would have been helpful to know how many options I had to vote with on the ballot.
It was 3.
It was 3.
Well, shucks.
Do you want to pick one now, or?
Well, I didn't vote for me because I voted for the option not to have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, all the other options pretty much mirror Bill Penniman's. So I think silence, Penniman, and Jan are the 3 effective options, Chris.
Well, toss my vote for Bill.
Okay, so that's 5.
Mine is silence. Not. I think you should take me out of there.
Okay. We can do that.
He didn't count you. He didn't count you, Jen, in that. He counted you in the silence vote. We're just calling your column a potential.
That is correct, Jennifer. Thank you.
So it sounds like silence wins.
Who favors the second last column?
For Bill, 5, and then for Moira was 10.
Right, and for Jan? Am I the only
And
one?
I think it was just you. Yeah.
Okay. So silence it is. Thank you. We have a vote. All right. Question number 2. The grade separated intersection proposed for Fairfax County Parkway and Sunrise Valley. Mark, could you please give a brief description of the issue? So as you know, it is in our plan on pages 2 and 5 of the clean version. And it is part of the Reston Network Analysis final report. It was in the 2014 plan. Mark, go ahead.
Thank you. What it is, the concerns from Polo Fields residents primarily with it regarding the grade separated interchange probably need to be addressed directly or by some means. What it is, the comprehensive plan needs to explicitly list probable impacts. Eminent domain is the biggest one, affecting perhaps up to 20 homes. Noise, because there's not mitigation by sound walls that has caused expense to a number of residents. And also that one, the reason it will take so long is extensive utilities relocation. Also, the prior studies that have been done had probably flawed input for traffic modeling simulation. Before there's any GSI design planning, there needs to be real data from the Herndon Metro Station traffic being a reality. Traffic flows have returned both to Fairfax County Parkway and Sunrise Valley Drive, if you're not aware of it, as the COVID emergency has waned. But traffic has not returned to the Herndon Metro bus depot in any significant number. What it is, the original traffic study suggested that even after an estimated 400 million was spent, not probably including the sound walls, the congestion improvement at the intersection would be minimal. What it is that there needs to be some kind of a statement, congestion improvement at this intersection has to be greater than elsewhere throughout the Reston area. It is the bottleneck. Anyway, that's the quickest summary I can give. Thanks.
And I will add to that according to the Fairfax County DOT's Reston funding plan draft cash flow done in fall of 2018, this was estimated to cost 400 million and to extend from 2038 to 2043. Okay.
And with respect to that, remember that the original cost estimate was 770 million because the oil pipeline, gas pipeline, fiber optics, and such that go through this intersection. Thank you.
I will tell you, one of my own personal concerns is that if there is a large number of homes taken from the Polo Field area, I think the loss of those homes would affect the health of the Polo Fields community. In other words, to have such a large number of homes taken.
There are 392 homes, if I've got the right count. Okay. And it's basically primarily one street is affected more than any other, and it's not directly accessed.
Okay.
Off of Sunrise Valley Drive as the others are. Thanks.
So our current language on page 2 says, and I'm quoting, while interim improvements to the intersection of Fairfax County Parkway and Sunrise Valley Drive are in the process of being addressed, an interchange is needed and recommended to adequately improve traffic movement for Reston as a whole, communities to the east and west, and neighborhoods close to the intersection. I would propose for consideration language like basically recommending a careful county study involving the community, the whole community, and especially the community most intimately affected. And so it would read, while interim improvements to the intersection at Fairfax County Parkway and Sunset Valley are in the process of being addressed, an interchange recommended to improve traffic movement for Reston as a whole, an interchange has been recommended to improve traffic movement for Reston as a whole and in this specific area. The county should conduct a review process with the full participation of the community to reconfirm this need and the design of the proposed project. So basically recommending a project rather than simply blank approving the development of the project. So let me ask you this: so you can look on page 2 to see the language. I did not type out for you my proposed change. How many are for the original language on page 2, which also appears in tabular form on page 5?
You need to put your hand down.
Okay.
Unless you're voting for whatever you just.
No. So how many like the language on page 2?
John, before we do that, give us our choices.
So I would say that the two choices that I've outlined are A, the text currently in page 2, or what I proposed, that we note that this has been recommended, but we say the county should conduct a review process with the full participation of the community to reconfirm the need for this project and its design.
Is what we're looking at page 2? It says it's page 1 in the pagination at the bottom.
It's page 2 is the, if you look at the heading Expressways and Principal Arterials, Dulles Toll Road and the Fairfax County Parkway. And it also appears on the chart on page 5.
So John, you're suggesting either keep it as it is in that section or as you've just explained it right now.
Exactly. The two choices I'm proposing we vote on are the existing language in the text or my proposed statement that there should be a process to confirm the need for this and its design, a process which would include the whole community.
Hey, John, this is Mark. I'm sorry to interrupt and spoil your flow, but I have a question.
Sure.
My understanding was that sometime, call it within the last 6 months, maybe it's a little bit longer, the county has had a pretty significant analysis done of the upgrades to the entire length of the Fairfax County Parkway and have been conducting community meetings up and down the Parkway for how to address various elements of the plan to make it grade separated, its, the majority of its length. And I guess my question is, does your proposed language anticipate that type of outreach would be done again? Or are we assuming that it's been done already? Or what are we recommending? Or I guess what are we expecting they do differently than what they're already doing today? That's my real question. I just don't know specifically as to whether this improvement has already been the subject of a public outreach meeting to where we're asking them to duplicate it, or whether it would be a new expectation going forward.
Mark, in my conversations, but this was 2 years ago with Tom Bashadny, when I asked him about this, and I would ask any of the Fairfax County DOT people here, they did not know exactly how this would be configured, how this design would be configured, and therefore the impact on the community. And I believe that before proceeding, we should know that. Are there Fairfax County DOT folks who can address Mark's question?
This is Mike Garcia. I can do it.
Thank you, Mike.
So we've been conducting a study of the Fairfax County Parkway for probably about the past 4 years now, all up and down the Parkway, as Mark has mentioned. We've done Franconia Springfield Parkway as well as the Fairfax County Parkway, so about 30 to 34 miles of it. We've done 3 different outreaches of public participation. Most recent one we did was in the summer of last year, so 2020, when we held a series of 3 public meetings as well. So we garnered some, decent participation. Obviously, as we've kind of gone through the different participations, the level has dropped. We had our most successful one probably when something was put out there about tolling the Parkway, and that wasn't liked by the community, and we heard that loud and clear and took that away. But we've done this. We've had extensive outreach on it, extensive evaluation. We've done extensive evaluation in this area as well. And so what you'll see and what we're planning to do is ask the Board of Supervisors to authorize us to start a plan amendment for the Parkway so that we can put the recommendations into the actual plan. And in this particular area, in the Sunrise Valley Drive, Fairfax County Parkway area, what we're doing is reconfirming the need for some form of grade separation. And so we tested an option and we found it to work. Part of the issue with it is that this particular intersection is very close to the Dulles Toll Road, and in turn very close to Sunrise Valley, Sunset Hills on the north side as well. So all those kind of impact each other. And so that's why we found the need for it in the 2014 amendment, and still it's reconfirmed with the need for the longer Fairfax County Parkway. But we have done extensive outreach with it, and we'll continue to do so as needed. And when we go through design, we'll again step out and show the community what we're trying to do. It's probably our anticipation that if we move forward with something, we'll probably need to depress Sunrise Valley Drive under the Parkway to keep the visual kind of aspects of it very low. And we'll try to see what we can do to move as much of the impact to the north side of Sunrise Valley Drive, trying to preserve, if not totally eliminate, the impacts to the residential community on the south side.
Thank you.
Couple of comments with that. Mike, appreciate everything that you said. I remember for the things on Fairfax County Parkway, the three major studies were all to the significantly to the south. When was the last time this area was actually anything done with the public? Can you address that?
We had a series of community meetings again last summer when we were putting out our recommendations as this is what the preferred alternative was. I believe our recordings are still up online under the Fairfax County Parkways project page. So we had a series of them. We had 2 nighttime ones and we had a lunchtime one as well. And we pushed them out that way every time, listening to the community and refining it. So that was the last actual time we've done it. But again, as we kind of go forward and ask the board to authorize a comp plan amendment, we'll again have public hearings at the Planning Commission and again at the Board of Supervisors. But we've kind of done a lot of public participation with it. But if you all feel like there's more, we can definitely try to. We can also come back and show you a little bit of it at the next meeting if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. So the presentation that I saw, it showed meetings July 29th, July 30th, and August 4th of 2020, and had preliminary recommendations for 3 or 4 different sections of the Parkway. The first section being kind of from the Franklin Farm area up to Route 7. And that preliminary recommendation, which was not the final recommendation, included maintaining the interchange as presently contemplated in terms of Sunrise Valley and the Parkway. So I guess the question would be, going forward, is the intended language to rethink that, or to take further analysis as part of the comp plan amendment for the interchanges? Because I think that's the disconnect I'm trying to solve, which is if the county's doing a comp plan amendment for the entire Parkway and we're peeling out this one element, I want to make sure that there's consistency between what they're doing and what we're asking them to do to resolve whatever questions Mark Malcolm has about how the design works.
It sounds like the county staff is reevaluating the nature of this intersection. So to the extent our table on page 5 is a recommendation, then it seems to me, paralleling what John said, that we ought to modify it and perhaps simply have it in that last column where it says grade separated crossing, something just is being reevaluated by the staff for impacts, benefits, and possible alternatives. period. So we acknowledge it's out there, but until we know more and they know more, it shouldn't specifically be recommended other than to be considered.
Are there other community things that are being planned on this issue? I'm just thinking of when we were in COVID lockdowns last year, a lot of people weren't able to participate.
Yeah, Len, certainly with the comp plan amendment, there would be, and actually, I think I was in the hospital.
Oh, you're right. Oh my God, that's right.
I have an excuse.
Congratulations. You're it's 1 year anniversary. That's right.
But Mike, that's correct. There will be public meetings around the comp plan amendments, correct?
Yes, and we've had extensive outreach already with the work we have done. And again, I'd invite you to see the project webpage. You can see how much we've actually done with the community. But what we'll do is we'll pull out the section that Mark Looney had talked about. We'll pull it in as part of our presentation at the next task force meeting so that you all can kind of see what it is. It is our recommendation to retain what's in the current plan now. We did test it and saw that it was beneficial and kind of needed for the area. I think when it comes time to designing the actual grade separation and what that looks like, that's where I kind of went a little bit further and said, well, these might be some of the aspects that we look for, minimizing the impacts on the residential, moving the impacts to the north to the extent we can, seeing if we can kind of keep the grade separation as low as possible so that we don't have any kind of visual blight. So those are the things that we're looking for.
Mike, quick question. You described what sounds like a reasonable effort to move the impact a little north. Have you discussed that specifically with the residents of Polo Fields?
We had our community meetings, and so what I can actually do is what I can specifically do is talk to the project coordinator next week and see if we specifically went out to the Polo Fields community. I can't answer that for sure, but what we can do is make sure that as we're going through the next part of this, as we ask the board to authorize this, that we can meet with the Polo Field community and make sure that we explain the recommendations and kind of talk them through it so that as we start to add this to the comprehensive plan, that they can put their mark on it to make sure that it's something that meets their needs too.
Yeah, it would be important
That
to
would
do
be
that.
extremely welcomed against the 4 factors that I mentioned and also provided to the task force earlier this evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, yes.
So I like the nugget form that Bill Penman suggested, at least for the chart on page 5, that we say it should be evaluated. This project has been proposed. It should be analyzed for its impacts, benefits, and alternatives.
If you add community engagement, which is what I think we just heard,
yes.
I think you probably have a winner there, John.
Okay, so we would change both what is on page 2 and 5 to include what Bill said in the chart and include that and also the community process on page 2. How many would be in favor of that change?
Virtual hands up, and I'll cut off in a couple. So, okay, cutting off in 3, 2, 1. Someone sneaked in. Wait, one went away. Oh, it's back. You guys are
Did
playing
you cut off?
Yeah, I cut off now.
So.
I see 11.
11? Okay.
Wait a minute, let me get it back up. You're still on the original one.
Yeah, what John just said.
Okay, right, good. My hand's up.
So what is our count?
Sorry, I took mine down. I need to put it back up.
Okay. Let me count one more time.
Good, good.
13.
13 for, and how many against? So let's all put our hands down. How many would be against?
All hands down. All right, I'm gonna cut off.
Your hand is up again. It was just up before.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna cut off.
Yeah, wasn't the second option your language that you read originally?
We would make language similar to what I said on page 2.
All right, so you're taking down your original language is no longer an option, is what I get again.
So what we're voting on now is not the text as printed,
I got that.
but rather the chart on page 5 as Bill suggested. And we would have that language plus emphasizing the community process on page 2.
Do you include anything that says, like you have currently up there, that the community is currently opposed to this intersection?
I don't think we would put that in the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I don't think that's appropriate for a comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan says yes, no, under consideration, but not say that.
Certainly the record of the discussion would show that, Dennis.
Okay.
So what do we have, Jose?
So I'll cut off in 3, 2, 1. I don't see any hands.
Okay, it's 13-0, it passes. Thank you all. Number 3, widening of Reston Parkway between South Lakes Drive and the Dulles Tow Road. So Gary Maupin has raised this concern. This widening was in the current plan and also in the Reston Network Analysis final report. What we have in our text on page 5 is that we're not going to do it.
And could I jump in here and say the reason I brought this up is I don't remember it being discussed at length in our conversations and what we eventually voted on and looked at. I mean, Bill clearly brought it up, and it's not in what we've done here, but it is in the previous plan. It is in the network analysis. And if you think about the development that's here in Reston on its way or being built, I want to make sure people can get in and out of Reston. Restonites can get out and come back, and businesses are able to do business. And so I'm concerned about the change that's occurred here from something that was analyzed in the past and left out of this plan. I think we need to keep Reston open for residents and people coming here to work and shop and so forth. So that's why I brought it up again. I'm sorry I brought it up again, but I just felt it needed to be discussed.
Thank you, Gary. Any other comments on this?
Yeah, this is Bill. Let me explain why I don't think that should go forward. Because it was discussed and I asked questions, and here's my understanding. What you have is a situation where heading, to the north, the bridge is not going to be widened between Sunrise Valley and the other side of the Parkway. So that's not going to change. Widening the road to the south of Sunrise Valley won't push any more people across that bridge. Rather, what it does and what it was intended to do is to relieve traffic pressure off of a side road to the south. And I can't remember whether it was South Lakes or which one, but they wanted to relieve backup pressure there. To me, the problem with that is a few things. One of them is it simply means there's going to be a longer delay for people on Sunrise Valley wanting to get across Reston Parkway or turn on Reston Parkway, because now you'll have a larger pool of people packed in this holding pen who have to be gotten through. So it doesn't improve overall traffic, it shifts burdens between people. The second thing is if you, oh, and by the way, heading south, it won't make any difference because there's not a traffic problem in that stretch anyway. The other problem is there are a lot of really nice trees along here. And so if we have the multi-use path added and you add the extra lanes, now I can't say what will happen to those trees, but I'm very concerned that they're going to go away, and not for a purpose that will actually enhance the movement of traffic into Reston, across the bridge, or anything else. So that's why I supported that view. And my understanding, it was based on comments made by staff as to how it would work.
Well, that was one of the questions I wanted to raise. Is Mike Garcia still on? I mean, there was a lot of things done to lead to this point. I just don't want to see it, you know, pop out of here without us going through it one more time.
Mike, you want to comment?
Yeah, so I mean, we did a presentation on this when we did the Reston Master Plan the first time around in 2013, 14, when we completed it then. We talked about how what we did is we removed a section of Reston Parkway to the north and replaced it with this one on the south because we were looking at a balancing of the volumes between the toll road, and we were just having extensive queuebacks that if we added the additional lane, we could actually get that to kind of be mitigated a little bit. So that was the rationale behind it. I'm happy to have us go ahead and pull the information and again include that as part of our presentation for next task force meeting. Just need maybe like 3 or 4 minutes as to show you as to why it was recommended the way it was. Because otherwise I'd have to recall from like 6 years of memory. I don't think I quite have it tonight. So
yeah, I mean, I think that would be helpful, Mike. And if you could also look at this question about whether adding the pathways and the lanes, what that'll do to the trees and vegetation along the road.
okay,
that would be helpful too. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I want to add that I believe in the widening, just one lane, because it's pretty congested as it is. I need to be somewhere and leaving at 9:20. Can we wrap this up here? Thank you.
John,
yes.
John, do you want to try to get through one more, and then wrap up at 9:20, and then we could start in the next meeting.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I need to,
Sounds good.
leave at 9:20.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number four is the question of the language of stating LOSE, level of service E, as a goal for TSA intersections. As you know, on a 6-4 vote, the working group voted to remove it. They then asked me to discuss the procedures for trying to achieve LOSE, which occur right under this particular passage. And so I had a long conversation with Fairfax County DOT. They said when we had the discussion, they said they didn't know whether they were even going to retain LOSE as a goal. They came back to me and they said they did want to do it because it did two things for them. It gave them a standard to use as leverage with developers, both to reduce congestion and also to in some cases, reduce density. So my proposal and Bill's proposal is that the sentence that occurs on page 12, which is stricken in the clean copy, it's a strike through, that it be restored with some additional language that that Fairfax County DOT recommended. So on page 12, if you agree with what Bill Penniman and I suggest, we would restore the language that LOS, so the title is LOS as one current metric for motorized vehicles. The level of service LOS goal for the Reston TSA intersections is LOS E, in order to, and this is the new language, in order to support implementation of the grid of streets and to improve mobility for pedestrians and bicycles, both in a manner more typical of urban areas. So how many would favor adding that language back?
Well, can we ask Gary? I see Gary had some thoughts on this. Gary, could you quickly tell us what your concerns are, please?
Well, I think, the question is why use LOSE at all? But overall, we talked through this and felt that this standard really wasn't going to, really be that effective. People are changing from it. They're not using a lot of this LOS standard. It's not in other plans and so forth. So I just felt we voted on it and it needs to stick with the vote that we had originally. If there was a lot of concern and conversation about using this when we went through it from quite a few people.
So if you've read my text, you'll see that VDOT's, or not VDOT, Fairfax County DOT Thomas Burks indicated that this LOSE is in a Fairfax County and DOT and VDOT MOU establishing LOSE as the standard for the 11 multimodal centers, including Reston. The 11 multimodal modal centers in Fairfax County. So
if that's true, though, then why do we even need it in here? I mean, it's just, the standards are going to be used by, as they go through this. It doesn't need to be, right here in the plan was my thought, but.
I did a research on LOSE and I found that LOSE is common standard in larger urban areas where some roadway congestion is inevitable. LOSE is equal to unstable flow operating at capacity. Flow becomes irregular and speed varies rapidly because there are virtually no usable gaps to maneuver in the traffic stream and speeds rarely reach the posted limit. I agree with Gary. I think that we've already voted on this. I don't know why we're looking at this again. Sorry.
okay, we voted on it in the working group. We didn't vote on it on the task force.
Thank you, John.
Does the task force
Yes.
want?
Sorry, I didn't characterize that quite so well, John.
I beg pardon?
I agree with that. I didn't characterize that as well. We haven't voted on it in the full task force. You're right.
Right.
So can we vote now?
I beg pardon?
Can we vote now?
We can. So let me not put Penniman's and Mooney's motion up. Let's have the text as it is with the text stricken. How many want to retain continue the strickening of that text about LOSE being the goal for TSA intersections? How many want to agree to remove it?
Hands up.
Clear your hands here.
So if you want to leave the text off, right, John? Have your hands up.
If you want to keep the text eliminated, put your hand up.
Okay. All right, everyone. I'm gonna cut off in 3, 2, 1. I see 10.
10. Okay. How many want to put it back in?
Clear hands, everyone.
Everybody remove your hands up. There you go. How many want it put back in?
All right, I'm gonna cut off hands in 3, 2, 1. I see 6.
6?
Yes.
It stays out. Okay. Walter, should we wrap it up for tonight?
Yes, let's wrap it up for tonight, and we'll tee up to start off the next one. We do have a lot at the next meeting, but I'll coordinate with Jose and the presenters. John, thank you. This is progress. Thank you, everybody who participated tonight. John, do you have any final things you want to say on transportation?
No, just thanks to everybody who prepared for the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
All right. Good night, everybody. Have a good evening, and
Thank you.
appreciate all your patience and work.
Have a good night, everyone.
Glad you're well, Walter.
Yes.
Hey, Walter, do you monitor your AOL email?
Yes, usually.
Okay. All right. Just checking.
I'll look. All right. Thank you, Dennis.
Might find something.